Okay, I'm Chris Avina with American Outdoor News, and today I'm here with Beau Beasley, the author of Healing Waters, Veteran Stories in Their Own Words. Beau, thank you so much for coming on, and this is such an important novel because it brings a lot of awareness to the things that our veterans are going through um, post post military.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate you allowing me to be on American Outdoor News podcast. And like you, I share the concern about our veterans, and the book that just came out that you mentioned is called Healing Waters, Veteran Stories of Recovery in Their Own Words. And it's basically my attempt to help give the American people a sneak peek into what the life of a post-military person's career is like, or I should say what happens to them when they get hurt,
Uh-huh.
and how my experience has been how Project Healing Waters has helped them through fly fishing to kind of get a new sense of normalcy.
Now, you've obviously dealt with a lot of veterans throughout the course of your career. Um, what sparked the passion for doing this?
Let me back up first and tell you that I am a retired for 10 years now, a Fairfax County firefighter and paramedic. I worked for them for 30 years. My last assignment was as a captain and a senior paramedic on Engine 27 in West Springfield, Virginia. So I had, my own share of exposure to emergency situations and life and death issues. Obviously, that wasn't anything I really faced on a regular basis. I mean, obviously, if you go into a burning building, it's dangerous, but it's not like in the military where you're literally being shot at. But
Yeah.
I had written a couple of guidebooks. I wrote Fly Fishing Virginia, and then I wrote Fly Fishing the Mid-Atlantic. And my friend Alan Folger, who is an artist, illustrated my book, Fly Fishing the Mid-Atlantic. And the very day the book came out, he called me up and said, "Hey, I've got an idea for your next book." And I'm like, "Alan, I just finished a book. I'm not doing another one." And he said, "No, really, I really think I've got a good idea." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he said, "You need to write a book about Project Healing Waters and how that fly fishing has helped these veterans' lives." And I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "I'm not doing it. I'm not qualified. Writing a guidebook is one thing. Writing a book about people's lives and how affects them is a totally different thing than telling somebody where to wade and what flies to use and where the closest fly shop is." But he kept after me, and he called me about every 3 months for about 2 years, believe it or not. And then finally I said, "No, Alan, I'm not going to do it." And he got real quiet. And I said, "Alan, are you there?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm here." He said, "The problem is, Beau," he said, "sooner or later, they're going to quit fighting in Afghanistan, and they're going to quit fighting in Iraq. And the American people are going to forget all about these veterans. And you can't let that happen." Now, Alan had served in Vietnam, and it was so bad, the media had done such a phenomenal job of demonizing the American serviceman
Yeah.
that by the time he got to the States, or by the time he was flown home, they were under orders to immediately go to the closest bathroom at the airport and change out of their uniform and into civilian clothes to prevent from being accosted by the public, because the media had so demonized the American soldier, which of course the American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, they don't make policy. They just enforce it.
Yeah.
Right? They don't decide, "Hey, today we're going to go to war today," right? They go where they're sent. And so he knew what it was like to come back and not get any kind of support. So I thought about it, and I spoke to my wife and I spoke to my publisher, and we decided to give it a try. I spent about a year working on the project, and I finally gave some drafts to my wife because she edits everything I write, and we make a great team. And I gave her 3 narratives on 3 different veterans, and I didn't hear anything from her. And like 3 days go by, and I go, "Hey, did you read what I emailed you? What did you think?" And she said, "Well, It's pretty good, which means it sucks. And I go, well, what's wrong? And she goes, honey, I know you. I know your style. I know how passionate you are about veterans. And you don't know these guys. I can tell you're writing this from like 10,000 feet, and it's just not going to work. And I got very defensive. I got very angry. And I said, okay, well, what would you do? And she said, well, are there some Project Healing Water programs near your home, near our house? I said, yeah, there's one in Quantico, Virginia, which at the time was the only one on a Marine Corps base. And I said, and there's one in Fort Belvoir in Virginia and near Alexandria. And she said, well, you need to quit interviewing people and just go to program meetings. Get to know these guys, really get to know them, then write about them. So I spent about 2 years of going to meetings, going to programs, and getting to know the people, and then writing about them. And, she said, you really need to think about this less as a microwave project and more as a crock pot. And it's going to take a long time. And she was right. And from the day of conception to the time the book came out was almost 9 years.
Wow.
Because I would write for a while and then I'd have to stop. And I'd write for a while and then I'd have to stop. And the reason it took so much time was because, first of all of the people that I write about in this book, there are 32 narratives. They're all real people. There are no composite characters in my book. And you see their picture and you see where they're from. Sometimes you see their before picture, before they got hurt, and then their after picture. And it's very raw. This is not you're not just going to sit down at your desk with a cup of coffee and read 4 or 5 of these chapters in a row. That's just typically not what happens because they're pretty intense and they're all real people, as I said. So I would have to get to know the person well. Then I would interview them. And usually it was done, I did it with my phone or a tape recorder, and I did audio like we are here. Then I would send the narrative to a transcriptionist, a court reporter, who would type the narrative up from the audio to a text. Then I would read over it, rewrite the narrative, craft the story, and then send it to the veteran. And then they would have to check it, because what I said to them was, look, this is going to be your story told your way. This is not my story. You have complete and total control. And if at the end of the project you decide, hey, Beau, this is just too personal, I can't make this information public, then we'll just delete it and I'll drop you from the book. Nobody was forced. Matter of fact, I had to beg people to be involved. Every single veteran that I interviewed was afraid, ironically, their greatest fear was that they were somehow going to be put in a positive light that they didn't deserve. Yeah. Nobody came to me and said, oh, please put me in your book. None of that ever happened. And what I told them was, look, if you give me the straight scoop and you're honest with me and you tell me what you went through, then I'm going to share your story your way. And we got every branch of the service, men, women, everything from paratroopers to Marine snipers to sailors to, you name it, EOD people, dog handlers, everything from the Korean. I did a Korean War vet all the way up to Afghanistan and Iraq. And these are very real people with real issues. And that's why it took so long, because I'd have to befriend them. I'd have to interview them. I'd have to get the narrative, write it, send it to them, then get them to send back any changes, then make those changes and send them back again to get them approved. Mm-hmm. Then once the second approval came back, I'd have to put pictures in and write the captions and send it to them for a third time. So if you can imagine doing that 3 times and having 32 supervisors, you can imagine,
Well, there's a big difference. There's a big difference between writing a story and writing a story that you actually have a personal connection with.
Right.
And that's what you actually had transformed into over time. And I would imagine it becomes very emotional.
It did. There were times where I'm not exaggerating. When I had somebody ask me one time, "Hey, Beau, when did you know you were?" Keep in mind, I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never done anything like this before. I mean, yeah, I'd written hundreds of magazine articles, how to, where to, that kind of stuff.
That's different.
And I've written a couple of guidebooks, but nothing like this. I had no training for it, didn't know what I was doing. So everything I learned the hard way. But I had somebody ask me, "Hey, when did you know you had really good material?" I said, "That's easy. I knew I had good material when I started having nightmares
Hmm.
from what I heard, and I wasn't even there, right?
Yeah.
This is sometimes 20 years after the fact. And there was more than once when I was at my desk writing it and crying so hard I couldn't see what was on screen and had to stop and walk away and get kind of compose myself and go back to try to make the narrative. And my biggest fear was that I was going to get in the way,
Hmm.
that somehow I was going to get in between the person and the story. And my daughter at the time, who was about 15, really helped me. She said, "Daddy, you need to think of yourself as a window. A window is part of the house, but you see through the window into the inside. And your job is to help people look to the inside." And that's what I was able to do by the grace of God and the fact that these veterans were brave enough. And, it's one thing if you tell me, "Hey, I had a really bad day." It's something else when you're telling me about the worst day you've ever had in your life.
Yeah.
And it really impacted me. When it impacted me the most was in the very beginning of the book. Ed Nicholson, the founder of Project Healing Waters, knew I was doing the book. He calls me up one day and he says, "Hey, do you want to go fish the Middle Fork of the Salmon River in Idaho?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to go." So he starts telling me about it, and I tell him I can't go. And he goes, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, Ed, I can't afford to do that." And Ed is a retired Navy captain, and he's the founder of Project Healing Waters. And he said, "Son, I didn't," and I got to hear what a Navy captain sounds like when he's angry. And trust me, you don't want to hear that. He said, "Son, I didn't ask you if you could afford to go. I asked you if you wanted to go." So I went. I spent a week on the river with these guys and all these veterans. And my roommate was Brian Mancini, who was a combat medic. We stayed in the same hotel room the night before we went to spend a week on the river together. And of course, being old medics, we started sharing medic stories. And he told me some of the things he did. And I'd say, "Well, one time I had this." And I realized in a matter of minutes, my exposure to trauma paled in comparison to Brian's.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not working on anybody that I know. He's working on people that he knows, which is a totally different animal. And Brian suffered a traumatic brain injury. He lost one of his eyes. And I remember it was not long after he'd gotten out of the military, and he said to me, "Beau, I've lost my career, I've lost my health, and I've lost my wife in the service of my country. What else do I have to give up?" And man, it tore me up. And I really got a sense of how much some of these veterans suffered. And I've been working on the book for about, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years. And I found out Brian killed himself.
Oh, that's terrible.
And
Yes.
and the book is dedicated to Brian Mancini. And the very first copy of the book went to his father. And a portion of every book sale, no matter where it happens, anywhere in the world, Project Healing Waters gets a percentage of the sales. That's the way it had it written into my contract as the author. So there are a lot of Brian Mancinis out there, and most of the public is just removed from that. They don't understand why somebody survives war and then comes home and 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years later kills themselves.
The images haunt them forever. It's
Well, they
not
do.
something, that you either learn to um, live with it or deal with it on a daily on the daily, or the option is different. But I'm sure you'll agree with me that the outdoors, no matter what capacity, has been very healing to a lot of veterans. Um, whether it's fishing, hunting. I have a personal friend that um, goes hiking for that's his therapy. He goes up into the mountains, goes hiking, jogging, whatever it is. Whatever the connection is to the outdoors for these men and for regular people as well, it is healing. It is therapeutic. And I thank you for relaying those stories.
Well, Chris, you hit the nail right on the head. Being outdoors, I really like fly fishing, but I have friends of mine that they like archery. My son-in-law really likes archery.
Yep.
I have other people that I know, they're bird hunters. That right, their thing is hunting for grouse. That's what they want to do, or hunting for pheasants. And the thing that being part of an organization, whether it's Backcountry Hunters and Anglers with their outreach to veterans, because the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers has a great outreach for veterans, or Project Healing Waters, or Warriors in Quiet Waters. What happens is these men and women in the service are part of a team. Then they get injured for whatever reason, and they're separated from that team, and they're not part of that team anymore. And they come back to quote unquote the real world,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have a mission anymore, and they're not part of a team. And being able to get outside and fly fish with someone else and be part of a group and be with someone who understands what you went through. I saw some pretty bad things as a paramedic, and what you don't want to do as a firefighter or a paramedic is you don't want to go see a psychiatrist. What you want to do is talk to another fireman. You want to talk to another paramedic. Now,
Yep.
eventually, it might get to the point where you need professional help. And I had that happen to me personally. We're talking to a fellow rescuer type career wasn't enough. And talking to the fire department counselor wasn't enough. I had to get professional help. And so I could relate in some way. But what happens is, they experience something that's very negative, and usually they press it down. They
Mm-hmm.
just go on to the next thing. And when you're at war, you're at some forward operating base, and one of your buddies gets killed. They don't have a funeral service and say, "Hey, let's take a week off and grieve," or whatever. They got to go back on patrol 6 hours from now, or whatever it is.
Yep.
And they don't get closure. So being in the outdoors, just listening to the water, listening to the birds, sitting in a tree stand, even if you don't get to shoot anything, but you get to listen to that gobbler calling out for a mate, or you get to watch a doe walk through with a fawn, and you go, that's really cool. And being outdoors in the great outdoors has a healing effect on people. And I don't care whether you're a military person or not, just being a human being. The problem, Chris, is we as Americans have gone from human beings to human doings. We're always doing something. We're going somewhere. We got this, we got that. We got to check our email. We have to check Instagram. We have to check Facebook. Got to look at TikTok. We're so busy, we can't ever just be.
Yeah.
And being outside and listening to the great outdoors and experiencing it, watching a hawk. Something as simple, believe it or not, is walking up on a black snake, and just seeing nature, watching ducks in a river go up and down the riverbank, right? A mother duck with her ducklings. It's something about being in the great outdoors. And I mean, I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm a Christian. I think God created this world. I'm part of it, and enjoying the great outdoors and seeing his creation always makes me feel better.
Well, if I could add to that, I never served in the military, which uh, I have to say is probably one of my regrets. But I think that being in a hunting camp or a fishing camp with a bunch of guys, a bunch of like-minded people who are there for the same thing, um, I think they gravitate towards that because they're used to that camaraderie. That's been ingrained. So that, may be therapeutic for them as well. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about hunting camp, just being with the guys, trading, smart ass remarks
Right,
and
right, right. Or, hey, I'm watching you clean your shotgun. You could do it a different way and it would be better. Have you ever tried this?
yep,
And one of the amazing things is I'm not a fly tire myself. I can barely tie my shoes, but there are plenty of guys that really like fly tying. And it's a very eye-hand repetitive motion, right? So it's a good skills learning steps. But these fly tires, they just share so much information between each other of how to do things a certain way, or have you tried this? Have you tried that? And I think, being in the outdoors, if you're out, like I had a major experience. I was on the Rappahannock River. I was fishing with a popping bug for shad, which you can't do. But I didn't know that. I didn't know enough to know that I couldn't do it that way. Somebody walked up to me, saw what I was doing was wrong, walked over and said, "What kind of fly are you using?" And I showed him, and he didn't laugh, which he very much could have. He said, "Well, here, try one of these instead. Here's a couple of shad darts." I started catching fish right away.
yeah,
That person did not know me, but he knew that I needed help. And he came over and helped me, and it made a huge impact. I mean, that was 15 years ago, and I still remember it, maybe longer than that. That 10 minutes act of kindness has generated hundreds of hours of me fly fishing for shad. And of course, then I want to turn around and share what I know. Lefty Cray, who's a great role model for me and probably the best known fly fisherman in the world, said to me, "Beau, there are only two people in fly fishing." And I guess broadly, you could say this about the outdoors in general. There are people that share their knowledge and there are people that show their knowledge. And you want to be around the people that share their knowledge.
hmm
So I think we as outdoorsmen have to show that to the next generation, right? Whether it's your kids or your local church group where you take the kids out camping, they're not going to know until somebody shows them and somebody makes them feel welcome in
yep.
the outdoors. And I think that's what Project Healing Waters does, and they just use fly fishing as a catalyst for that.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And the camp and camaraderie is a bonus. I guided four young hunters last year to their first year.
Right? They'll never forget that.
No, big accomplishment.
Yeah, they'll never forget that. And it's not just the hunt, it's getting ready for the hunt. It's getting the right gear. It's making sure I've got my gun sighted in. All of that stuff. It's a total experience and then reliving it afterwards. And I just feel like as a civilian, like you, I didn't serve. And I'm not a guy with a lot of money, so I can't write a big check. Although I've written a couple of guidebooks, I'm probably not really good enough to be a guide. But what I can do is write, so that's what I did. And somebody can do something. If you're listening to this program, don't think, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. All you have to do is be available. That's what veterans want. They want you to be honest and be available. That's all.
Yeah, we got to contribute in our own way. We all have the capacity to do it, different levels.
Correct.
Do what we can.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, on another note, before we close out, the American gun owner is the smallest demographic of voters. They don't vote. So I would like to put it out there that every gun owner out there should go out and exercise your American right to vote in this presidential election. It's an important one. And no matter who you choose to vote for, get out and vote.
Well, let me just say, you know, I think about what these men and women have done to secure my right to vote. How can I say, oh, I just don't feel like going to do it? Let me tell you, there are people all over the world that don't have what we have. We live in the greatest country in the world. And the only way we're able to stay free, and I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, is because our men and women have paid for it with their blood.
Yeah. And we
Right?
owe it to them.
And we owe it to them to go vote. And if you want to keep that Second Amendment right, you better go vote. If you want to keep your First Amendment right to be able to talk about how you feel, you better vote. So, like you, I'm not going to tell people who to vote for, but, you know, they're only rights if you can keep them. It doesn't make any difference if you have the right to do something, but you have no way to exercise it.
Yep.
So, I would say, you know, these men and women from as early as, you know, the colonial war, the Revolutionary War, they were fighting for us to have options and to be able to have our peace, to live, you know, in a free country and exercise our rights to hunt or free speech or religion or to be secure in our papers and in our home. And we need to go out and vote, because I can assure you there are other people out there that don't share those values, and you better believe they're voting.
Absolutely. So, you know, if you want to maintain our way of life and enhance it and make it better, don't sit on the couch and bitch about it. If you don't vote, you forfeit that right to complain about it.
Well, you can complain, but you're not doing anything.
That's the thing.
Right? So
Exactly.
don't, you know, there's an old adage, don't tell me, show me. Right? Go
100%.
do it. Go do it. So I, like you, I would encourage our men and women that are sportsmen listening out there, young mothers, young husbands, go vote. Go vote. Exercise your right. If you don't know, go Google where can I vote and put in your location. And don't think that just the president matters, right? You need to be voting for your congressmen, your senators, your city councilmen. You know, the closer the government is to you, the more sway you have. So if it's a county election or a school board or whatever it is, vote, 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 vote. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of men and women have died to secure that right for you, so you should exercise it.
It all starts locally. Exercise
Absolutely.
that right. So, Beau, where can we find your book?
So you can get the book from Amazon, or you can check your local bookstore, or if you want an autographed copy, you can come to my website and order it, which is my name, Beau Beasley, Beaubeasley, BeauBeasley.com. And just go to my website and order it, and I'll be glad to autograph it and drop it in the mail to you. And again, a portion of all proceeds goes back to Project Healing Waters to keep our men and women on the water and enjoying the great outdoors through fly fishing.
All right. I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today. Important topic. I'm glad we were able to get it out there, and definitely go to the website, check it out, and feel free to subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, iTunes, and all the rest of them.
And thank you so much, Chris, for having me on. And I just want to say, you know, soon, eventually we'll be coming around to Veterans Day. We need to be thinking about our veterans every day, not just Veterans Day.
Yep.
And we need to be thinking about them when the war is over, not just we need them when we need them, and then we don't think about them anymore. So I really, really appreciate you having me on your American Outdoor News, and I hope your readers and listeners will enjoy the book.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Chris.